it's so subtle, but I think it's also why a lot of people either don't or can't have those important but hard conversations, because they're not intentional with where their brain, where their heart's at right before or the week before or whatever. I've found that a lot of the best coaches are just natural encouragers. So it's that thing of being able to say, all right, making sure that you're celebrating the process, but also embedding some of those celebrations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Successful Failures podcast. I hope that my time away from you hasn't been too long, but today I got an amazing episode for you with the one, the only Mitch Matthews. Now, who is Mitch Matthews? Well, he is a success coach, a public speaker, a life coach that's worked with United, Nike, NASA, Disney. He is an incredible guy, and honestly, having my hour-long interview with him was probably one of the best interviews I've ever had. He's just one of those guys that believes in the best in you. He is the perfect life or success coach that I found, and my interview with him was absolutely incredible. And that is what we have today, so get ready. This is probably my favorite interview that I've had, and I can't wait to have him again on the podcast. A couple quick announcements. These take a long time to make, and also this is not my first or my second job. This is a hobby horse of mine, so if you really like it, it would be great if you could send this podcast to your friends, your family, spread it out, really get the word out there of what this podcast is, and really the goal of having important conversations to change lives. And secondly, if you really enjoy this, leave a rating, a review. It really helps us with the algorithm. 90% of all of our streams come from Apple Podcasts, so if you leave a review there, it will bring us up in the algorithm, which will give us more views. So really appreciate that. So with that out of the way, get ready for today's interview with Mitch Matthews. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me, Mitch. How about we just start with, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, right. So I'm Mitch Matthews, and I am a coach, a speaker, a content creator, a podcaster, a serial entrepreneur. Most importantly, I'm a husband, a dad, an coffee addict, a proud dog owner, all those things. So yeah, there's a mix of stuff in there.
So you seem very talented, got your hands in a lot of areas, but
well, at least have a short attention span. I don't know about that.
Well, that's every great creator. They
Yeah,
can't
right.
focus on a lot. But
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm so excited that you're on this podcast. It means a lot to me that you would take your time out of your day to talk to me. But I really wanted to talk about you and where you've been at, how you've come through in life. And I really want to start with, I read your bio. You're a serial entrepreneur. What does that mean? And how crazy of an entrepreneur are you?
Right. Exactly. All of those things. So a serial entrepreneur to me is usually entrepreneurs, when you dig into their story, that entrepreneurial bug bit early. And serial entrepreneurship doesn't mean a long list of wild successes. Generally, what it means is a number of experiments, and some of those go really well, and some of those go down in flames. And so that's definitely been my experience. I started out kind of a weird kid. So I got interested in unique things. I wasn't really into normal sports and stuff like that. I got into bicycling, and then I basically visited our local bike shop and fell in love with that. And so my 13th summer, as a 13-year-old, I went, and every day I spent a couple of hours at least at my local bike shop in my little small hometown in Iowa. And it was the place to be. It was, 2 blocks off of the square. And we lived in kind of one of those Hallmark Christmas movie small towns with the courthouse in the middle and, shops all around it. And we were 2 blocks off of that in this hole in the wall building that was next to the town's Goodwill and behind, or in front of the town's only strip club. So it was definitely the place to be as a 13-year-old. But I just learned all sorts of stuff. And finally, the bike shop owner and his wife, they took pity on me and decided to hire me instead of having me arrested for loitering. And so I started working at the bike shop at 13, which I think violated some state laws or something. But my parents were on board, and Marty and Sherry Doe, and the bike shop owners, they trusted me to do a lot of stuff. And I just started to my love for biking transferred to entrepreneurship. And
Hmm.
I didn't even realize it at the time, but I just started to fall into love with the idea of owning my own thing and doing my own thing. And I just watched Marty do this. And, he gave me responsibilities I probably shouldn't have had. Like at 15, I'm doing, orders of thousands of dollars of Oakley sunglasses and understanding what markups look like and what it means to sell that stuff and what it means to not sell that stuff. And I just loved it. So, in college, when I was next door to your dad in my dorm, um, I basically my first business was to create a training business at
Hmm.
20. I basically had gone and working at the bike shop, basically 13 through my college years. I learned how to sell. I
Hmm.
figured out really quickly, Drew, that I was not good at working on bikes. I really would have loved to be gifted as a mechanic, but everybody figured out that was not my gifting. But boy, could I sell stuff. And so, because I loved it, I love bikes. I love figuring out what people wanted, helping them find that thing that they really needed. And I was really good at it. And I had attended a number of selling schools. At 14, I attended my first Schwinn selling school, which it was
Hmm.
me and a bunch of middle-aged bike shop owners. And I just loved it. I loved it. So at 20, I started to say, you know what? Marty, the bike shop owner, that I worked for, he needed to train up his people, but he didn't want to send everybody because the team had really expanded by that time. He didn't want to send everybody to a Schwinn selling school again. So he's like, come back and train everybody. And so I created a three session training session. Here I was 20, right? I barely knew what I was doing, but I kind of had it together and taught them basic selling skills. And then I hired a number of our college friends to come and be uh, customers so that people could try it out and use these things and all that stuff. And I sold $1,000 worth of training as a 20-year-old. I'm like, oh man, this is great. So I just started to do that for organizations that were like Marty that didn't have the budget to send people away. I would just come in and do training, and I just loved it. And so I
Hmm.
completed my degree, and I knew that I probably needed to go have a bunch more experiences in the world before somebody would hire me on a regular basis to do stuff like that. But that bug bit early, and it's just continued to grow. So now we have a full-fledged training business where I do speaking and one-on-one coaching, but we have a whole online training department for what we do, and we've helped thousands of people around the world doing that. So, yeah, that that
Hmm.
that serial entrepreneur bug bit when I wasn't even looking and changed my whole life.
And now you're infected.
Yeah, right, exactly. And now I'm spreading that infection around. I tell you what.
It's so, you mentioned at the beginning of that, statement that, your serial entrepreneurship has been categorized by some successes and some failures, and you and I both know that oftentimes
Absolutely.
what's published in social media is only the success and
Right.
how amazing you are and how great you are. Why do you
Yeah.
highlight your failures as something that's helped you, and what exactly on the end has taught you how to succeed?
Yeah, I love it. So one of the online programs that we offer is a coach training and certification program. We train people who want to be life coaches, success coaches, and things like that. And we've been able to help thousands of people around the world like launch and build successful coaching businesses, which I love. I just think that's great. It's one of the best ways to become an entrepreneur, especially if you have that bent to encourage people and help people be all they were created to be, right?
Hmm.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is we have a coaching model which teaches people how to coach. And our coaching model is based on the scientific method,
Hmm.
which Drew, your dad would tell you I was solid B minus science student. Like if you like, you don't want to trust me for, being able to name the periodic table, but I do appreciate the philosophy of science. And that is when you look at the scientific method, it is beautiful because basically a scientist, when they decide they want to prove or disprove something, they put on their white coat, their white lab coat, they walk into the lab, and they basically need to create a hypothesis, which is, if you look at the definition of hypothesis in the Webster's dictionary, it says an educated guess, a
Mm,
best guess at how something's going to go, which I think is really a better definition of anybody's, plan. Like when we
mm,
put a plan together, it's that thing of, well, it's a best guess. It's how we hope, how we think it might go. But then you have to move into, like the scientific method says, you have to move into experimenting. And as
mm,
long as you keep that white lab coat mentality and say, you know what, we're going to start to experiment. And what's beautiful about a hypothesis is if it proves to be true, you've learned something. If it proves to be false, you've learned something,
mhm,
right? If you're experimenting, you're learning. And same thing with entrepreneurship, same thing with life. There have been experiments that I thought were going to be wildly successful. And like I said, some went down in flames, right? But what's wild about that is when I look back at some of those, some of the most important things I've ever learned have come from the big failures and setbacks.
mm.
I've still learned from the successes and I appreciate the successes. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but when I look back on some of the best decisions I made in our business, many of those are built on colossal mistakes I made
Mm,
initially.
mm. That's an excellent answer. Oh, man. I get to, like, talk to you for hours. Jeez.
I love it. This is great. This is why you have a podcast, Drew. This is great.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a point there on to have a success is you learn something. To fail, you
Yep.
learn something.
Yep.
I've often noticed that one of the things that people struggle with is just trying to start something in general.
Sure.
Is
Yep.
that something that you deal with? And if so, how can you encourage people, or how do you encourage people to just take a step forward?
Yep. So, yes. The answer to your question is yes. So, Drew, people that have hung out with me for a while know certain things. One is I'm a recovering worrier. So,
Mhm.
not warrior. I said that once from stage and somebody said, "Thank you for your service." Like, no, not warrior, worrier. Like I black belt level worrier.
Oof.
And so I've had to address that issue because oftentimes fear and worry is one of the things that shuts down those taking those first steps and allowing yourself, kind of giving yourself the permission to experiment, right?
Mm,
But one of the other things that's less talked about, but I think more common than people realize is perfectionism.
mm,
And I, Mitch Matthews, am a recovering perfectionist.
mm,
And perfectionism, the reason why I talk about it so much is it's often totally misdiagnosed. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm not a perfectionist," because they think perfectionists have a perfectly organized desk, that their kitchen could be on El Decor cover, that, everything in their home is absolutely perfect and in its place, all that stuff. But perfectionists, we're actually pile people. Because,
mm.
like, if you look at your desk, I'm not sure where you are right now, but if you're a perfectionist and if you're listening to this and you're looking at your desk, there is a good chance that you have a pile of crap on one corner of your desk because as a perfectionist, we go to a meeting, we come back with some piece of paper, some agenda, some handout, and we put it on the corner of our desk because we don't have the perfect place to file that yet. And boy, as
Yeah.
a perfectionist, we're going to wait till we have the perfect place to put that. And boy, on Saturday, I'm going to take a couple hours and really organize this shit, like all that stuff, right? And then the pile just keeps growing. And then you realize somebody's going to come to your desk. So you take that pile and you put it in a bag or a box or something under your desk, or, you put it in a drawer, all that stuff. Perfectionists also are really good at starting stuff, but we don't tend to be great at landing stuff, completing
Mm,
stuff. So, perfectionists often are the ones that absolutely need, me included, a deadline to get something done.
Mm.
So, it could be if you're a perfectionist and you were in college, there's a good chance if you had a paper due and it was due at midnight, you were hitting send at 11:59 because you needed that deadline to force you to say, well, it's not perfect, but at least it's done, send, right?
You're reading my mail,
What
man.
Yeah, right, exactly. So perfectionism, what's interesting about perfectionism is sneaky. It
Hmm.
starts by saying, I have a high level of excellence. I want to do great things. I want to, put things out into the world that really represent me, all of that stuff. Having a high value for excellence is a good thing. But most new initiatives, most dreams that you want to start pursuing, they start messy.
Hmm.
They start imperfect. So for a perfectionist, whether you're, diagnosed or not, oftentimes a perfectionist, they want to have the perfect first step. A perfectionist wants to not waste any time on the wrong step,
Hmm.
right? A perfectionist, because they don't have the perfect plan with 30 steps laid out one by one, in complete and perfect sequence. Unless they have that, they don't start, right?
Hmm.
So what's interesting is that a lot of people don't start, I believe, more because they have maybe some deep down perfectionism issues in there. And so that's something I like to talk about, some of the big mistakes, some of the, messy, colossal failures. And I very sparingly, I love the name of your podcast. I think it's fantastic because I think it's celebrating the right things. But
Hmm.
I generally I don't label things that go differently than we planned as failures.
Hmm.
They are learning events, but sometimes they are painful.
Hmm.
Like, they are absolutely painful. I mean, I've got a number of examples of those.
Yeah. Well, I think we all
Right.
do. I think
Yeah.
pain is a necessary thing of life, and in order to feel
Yeah.
like the full experience, you gotta experience some pain. Because then
Yep.
how do you know what real like joy or love
Absolutely.
is?
And pain is an indicator dash on the or it's an indicator light on the dash,
Yeah.
right? Like, I just got a new Ford F-150 truck and the dash is like a space shuttle. It's crazy. I mean, it's very cool. I'm really enjoying it, but the number of indicator lights, it's a little overwhelming now. I mean, it's incredible. But that's the thing. Fear, resistance, any of those things that we feel like we're thinking about starting something, we want to
Hmm.
try something, we want to begin something, oftentimes that indicator light starts to come on, and maybe the indicator light feels like fear, or it
Hmm.
feels like worry or concern or whatever, right? It's like, hey, that's just like the lights on my dash. Sometimes they're just letting me know I need to look at something, and sometimes
Hmm.
I need to dismiss them. Like, both of our boys, we have two boys and they're in their 20s. If I put something in the back seat of my truck and then I get out to go somewhere, it tells me check on the baby in the back seat. It literally flashes a baby seat on the like iPad thing on the dash. It says check the baby, like check the back seat. And I'm like, I don't have a baby. I haven't had a baby in over 2 decades. Thank you very much, truck. Right. So, like, sometimes the indicator lights on the truck aren't accurate. And sometimes the indicator lights in our heart, in our mind, all that stuff. Sometimes we have to recognize, like, hey, that, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala that
Hmm.
is, a big part of our indicator lights, right? And the amygdala is designed to keep us safe. And it's really good at picking up on potential danger. It's not real good at figuring out what's real or not. So
Hmm.
sometimes, somebody
Hmm.
thinks about starting something new, trying something, taking a risk in some way. You might have the indicator light of fear or danger. You need to take a look and say, is it really danger? I mean, the amygdala doesn't know. It says lions, tigers, and bears, right?
Oh
But you
my.
might look at that and go, you know what? It feels like danger, but maybe a couple of people will find out I took a night class and it didn't go well. Big
Hmm.
deal, right? Or
Hmm.
maybe I put something out on Facebook and I invite people to do this thing with me and nobody says yes. Is am I at risk of dying from that? Might not be a great feeling, but I'm not going to die. It's not a lion, a tiger, or a bear. So those indicator lights, we just, we can pay attention to them. but sometimes we can totally disregard them.
Mm, excellent answer. So you said that you're a recovering perfectionist. I guess like
Yes.
from that definition, I probably am too.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, if
do
you've
you?
got this podcast, you are in recovery, my friend. But just like, I mean, a number of, I've got my wife works at our church. We're in a number of different things that we get to help a lot of different people, which is a really, a great honor, which a lot of those folks are in different forms of recovery. Right.
Yeah.
And, and when I say I'm a recovering worrier, I'm not being dismissive of somebody that's in recovery from alcohol or drugs or any of those things. But it is very much like that in that it is a day to day decision,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it's, I have a good friend that hasn't had a drink in over 30 years, changed his life, it almost destroyed his life, made the change. But he still, even though it's been 30 years, he still has to choose every day.
Mm.
Now, that choice is easier each day, but some days it's still hard, right?
Mm.
Same thing for me with worry. Same thing with me for perfectionism. I still have to choose it every day.
So let's go on. Let's stay on there for a second.
Yeah.
Um, how have you tried to recover from your perfectionism? And does it like surprise you someday? You're like, I thought I figured this out, and it's back
Oh,
here again. I
yeah.
feel like I'm at
Oh,
square one.
absolutely. Like it's sneaky. It's so
Yeah.
sneaky. Yeah, right. So, part of it is choosing what you're going to celebrate.
Mm. Yes. Yes.
As a perfectionist, it's really easy to say, well, I'll celebrate when I've reached that summit.
Hmm.
I'll celebrate when I have all of my to-do lists checked off. I'll celebrate when that event is behind me, right? The challenge with that is, if you've ever climbed a mountain, there's a good chance that, once you hit the summit, you either see the next mountain over and go, ooh, I want that one too. Or you realize, oh crap, I got to get down off this thing, right? Like, it's so often that once we do something, once we achieve something, once we do truly have it behind us, if we don't take a second to enjoy that, we'll miss all of it. Right. And I have to remind myself of that all the time. So with perfectionism, part of it is to say, hey, how do I want to celebrate the milestones? How do I want to celebrate the journey? I mean, we're doing some new things, some new initiatives right now with our business on Facebook ads and marketing and all this kind of stuff. And one of my friends, he's a very, very successful entrepreneur, has been down this road a little while. And he said, well, when you start Facebook ads, he said, has anybody ever warned you what the experience is like? And I said, no. He's like, well, the experience of starting the process of Facebook ads is like getting kicked in the crotch every day. So just like be ready because that's the experience because you're just going to spend money and it just feels like you're throwing it in the wind and all that stuff. He said, but over time, you're going to start seeing certain indicators where it's like, oh, this is working. And then, oh, this is working really well. But he said the first indicator that you're actually on track is you will feel like you're getting kicked in the nuts. I was like, duly noted. Thanks for the warning, right? So he's like, you got to get ready for that. And when you experience that, the first time you were going to be mad. And he said, I just want you to take a breath and go, oh, yeah, this is the process, right? So it's that thing of being able to say, all right, making sure that you're celebrating the process, but also embedding some of those celebrations because sometimes you're not going to want to celebrate some of the things you thought, you kind of predetermined you were going to celebrate. I didn't necessarily want to celebrate the first time we spent a lot of money. I got that big invoice, but at the same time, I'm like, wait, the only way to get to the other side of this is, in this case, to get kicked in the groin, right? Like almost legitimately. But it's like, okay, right. This is the process, and this is how we get through. Like there are some things you can get around, there are some things you can get over, but a lot of things you have to get through them.
That's an excellent answer. Jeez, I'm taking this all in. This is great.
Hey, this is great. You're a good interviewer, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. That was not
Yeah.
scripted.
That's all right. It's great.
So the process of getting kicked in the crotch. No,
yeah, right. Exactly.
So I actually have a genuine question. How much has having good people around you, like your wife, or
Yeah.
just close friends, have helped you avoid bad decisions or get through bad decisions?
It makes all the difference in the world.
Really? Okay. How do you find those
100%.
people?
Yes, right? That's a great question.
Thank you.
One of the best ways to find those people is to be that person for somebody else.
Okay, go there. Talk to me. Talk to me.
Right? So, part of it, and your parents know my wife. So if you've asked them, they've already probably told you I married up. Like I swung for the fences and hit a home run, and my wife, is amazing, right? Um, and so I am wildly blessed. Now, what's interesting about my wife, Melissa, is she grew up a farm kid. I
Hmm.
grew up, my parents are amazing people. And my dad was a warden in a prison. My mom was an accountant and also then a CFO for an organization.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so we had a kind of a predictable life, especially from an income perspective. My wife, Melissa, grew up as a farm kid. So like, some years were amazing, some years were dry, right?
Hmm.
So she actually, when it came to entrepreneurship and really having our whole life be funded by our businesses, she was a lot more ready for risk than I was,
Hmm.
right? So, part of it at the same time, though, was we also had to talk through those things because when I first started my businesses, my first business was when I was in college. My second business was on the side of a full time job. And those things really brought in nice income, but not enough to pay all the bills, right?
Hmm.
Um, my wife, she actually saw the opportunity before I did. So, she was totally open to saying, hey, let's just go for it. Right. And there, the household I grew up in, there was a part of me that's like, well, no, that's not safe. That's not
Hmm.
predictable, all of that. What's great about that is my wife was my biggest encourager, but I also, that encouragement came from our differences, not our similarities,
Hmm.
right? So what's interesting about that is when you surround yourself with the right people, oftentimes they don't look exactly like you.
Hmm.
And those
That's good.
differences are oftentimes what makes for great bonds, great partnerships, great friendships, all of those things. But those differences can also at times be a part of what causes friction.
Hmm.
Because Mel, she was ready to just go. And I'm like, are you nuts? Right. Like, so, and that those differences also have kept us safe in some ways, all that stuff. Same thing. As I started to build my business, I started to realize like I was the CEO of our company. I realized, okay, I'm doing this, but I've never done this before.
Hmm.
And so I started to look around and one of the things that made a huge difference for me was and I truly believe this is God's blessing, God's providence, but two other people in my community who I met through basically a blogging group, a bunch of nerds getting together for blogging in the early 2000s when nobody else was doing it, right? Um, but two other people were doing something similar. They were CEOs of their own companies, kind of at the top of their ladder, in their cases, two small teams or solopreneurs. And we
Hmm.
realized, hey, we need each other to just like, have a session a month where we can celebrate, where we can commiserate, where we can push each other and those types of things. And so we got together and basically once a month we formed a mastermind group, is
Hmm.
basically what it's called. Benjamin Franklin called it a junto, which is just a Greek word for a group. But it basically a small group of like-minded people who get together for the sole purpose of encouraging and pushing each other.
Hmm.
And so I got together with these two other entrepreneurs monthly, and we would get together for 3 hours, and we'd have a half hour for breaking bread and eating because we just figured we needed to do that anyway, right? And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
gave us the chance to talk about life and family and friendships and all those things. And then we got into basically 45 minutes apiece of what's working, what's not, what are you trying to do, and what do you want to have done by the next time we meet?
Hmm.
And
Uh,
month to month, sometimes they were the only people that were holding me accountable, right?
Mm,
But boy, did they hold me accountable. And that made a huge difference. The key
mm,
there, and the part of the reason why that worked is we were all committed to be that for each other.
mm,
There wasn't one person in the group that's like, yeah, you guys do this for me. Right? It's we were all in it together and we gave each other complete permission to get up in each other's stuff as needed. And boy, that meant some hard conversations sometimes. It
mm.
also meant a lot of laughter. It also meant a lot of tears and a lot of celebrations and we were there for each other. So, and now all three of our businesses have grown so much that we get to celebrate, but we get to do it and meet differently now because we've had to move and all these kinds of things. So it's that kind of thing. And then I also have a great friend that I meet with every week at 6 a.m. on Friday mornings for a cup of coffee. And we celebrate, we laugh, we push each other, all of that. And he's now an entrepreneur as well, but it doesn't have to be somebody that's doing the exact same thing, but you need to be that for somebody else. And to find people that are willing to be that for you is the greatest blessing.
Excellent answer. You mentioned on there, giving them permission to,
Yeah. Get
challenge
up in your
you.
junk. Yeah.
Yeah, that is I think everyone says that they wanna do that, and then it actually happens, they're like, "I
Yeah,
don't know,
right.
this is
Yeah.
really uncomfortable." What does
Yep.
that mean to you, and how have you used permission in your coaching life?
Yeah. Well, permission's at the core of pretty much everything I do. But I
Mm,
would also say that when it comes to the relationships we were just talking about, um, having that intention is important in the beginning.
mm,
And Abraham Lincoln once said, and I'll probably butcher exactly how he said it, but he basically said, I trust everyone and I only distrust those who let me down.
mm.
And so when you enter
That's a
into
good
a
quote.
relationship where you're like, you know what, I want to meet on a regular basis to encourage each other, have some fun, push each other, all of that. When you enter into that kind of relationship, my encouragement is give yourself permission to start it intentionally, but also give yourself permission to just do an experiment of like 3 months. When
Mm.
we started meeting in our mastermind, we didn't say, hey, let's meet for the next decade, which we did meet for 15 years consistently, which is incredible. We just said, let's meet. And in our case, we said, let's meet consistently for 6 months. And
Mm,
then we all have the out clause, meaning we can bow out with 100% grace. Like if
mm,
we get to 6 months and this isn't helping, we can quit without feeling bad at all.
mm,
And we did that 5 months, we started and then 5 months in, we said, "Okay, next month is 6 months." And we said, "We're only doing this for 6 months. If it doesn't help, what do you guys think?" And we reiterated, like, "You're okay if I say no. You're okay if I say no, right?" And everybody was like, "Yeah." And I said, "This has been one of the most helpful things I've ever done in my life.
mm,
I hope we do it for at least 6 years." But I said, "How about we do it for another 6 months?" And they're like, I'm in." And so
mm,
boom, right? But I do think you have to enter in um, with some out clauses because if somebody feels like they're entering into something like that and they can never get out, it's
mm,
amazing how quickly friendship can become slavery if you don't feel like
mm.
you have an out,
Oh, man. I
right?
now that you're saying that, I noticed in my own life recently, I've started telling people, like, "If you don't like this," or, like, "If you don't like what I'm about to say," like, "You have my permission to say you don't like it, like, it's okay."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I I didn't realize I'm doing the exact what you're saying. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
right?
man.
And permission's huge because I think also in our day and age, it's interesting how many people are in terrible jobs, bad relationships, terrible situations because they're not willing to have one hard conversation,
Oh, man, yeah. Yeah.
right? But you have to give yourself permission to have the hard conversation,
Hmm,
right? Or like you said, you have to give other people permission to say, "Hey, you may not like this, but I need to talk about this. I'm going to give you my perspective. I'm here to listen to your perspective, but I got to have this conversation."
hmm. So,
Right?
let's
And
say
and I think that is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself and anybody you're in relationship with, but it's also becoming more and more rare.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's say you're coaching me and
Yeah.
I struggle in this area hypothetically. How would you
Hypothetically.
help me hypothetically? Uh,
Hypothetically.
how would you help me to get better at giving permission to myself and other people? Like, what would you say? What would you do? How would you communicate
Yes.
that?
What I would do is I would 15 minutes to an hour before you're gonna meet with that person, get on social media and try to find every post that antagonizes you and makes you angry, right? And then listen to some talk radio for a little bit and really get agitated. And then enter into that conversation just totally fired up with your eyes like red, right? And your fists like already white knuckled. I say that jokingly. Hopefully, you know that's joking because so many people are like, I tried to have a hard conversation, but they just wouldn't listen to me. And I was like, what were you doing for the hour before that
Mm.
conversation?
Oh man,
Oh,
that's so good.
I was in my car. What were you doing in your car? I was scrolling on Instagram. Well, Instagram, like the stuff that makes you mad is more addictive than the stuff that makes you happy. So they know those algorithms. They know what makes you mad. So you were on Instagram for a half hour and an hour before that conversation. How do you think your brain was at? Where do you think your amygdala was at? Right there, right?
Mm,
Talking about, that thing that tries to keep us safe. Your amygdala doesn't know the difference. So
mm,
so I bring that up because it's so subtle, but I think it's also why a lot of people either don't or can't have those important but hard conversations because they're not intentional with where their brain, where their heart's at right
mm,
before or the week before or whatever. Right.
mm,
So part of it is just be ready to prepare yourself. Another is giving yourself permission to be intentional. And by being intentional, what that means is that does not mean have that argument in your head 100 times before you have the conversation with your friend.
mm,
That's another strategy. The reason why I bring it up is that's something that the recovering worrier part of my brain used to do all the time, right? Like you have to have a hard conversation because your friend did something that offended you or something's wrong in the relationship and what you do is you ruminate on it and you win that conversation 100 times over in your brain, right? And what that does is that just reiterates why you're right and why they're wrong and all that stuff. The reason why I can say that is because I did it, right?
mm,
And so one of the other things is when I say give yourself permission to prepare, it doesn't mean ruminate. It
mm,
means to
mm,
say, hey, what do I need to talk about? Right. And part of that is to be able to say, okay, if the indicator light on the dash is you were offended, if the indicator light on the dash is you feel like the relationship's imbalanced, if the indicator light is on the dash that you feel disrespected, whatever
mm,
that is, right? Look at the indicator light and try to understand the emotion you are feeling, and not justify the emotion you're feeling. Just say,
mm.
all right, name the emotion you're feeling, and then be able to say, okay, what are some reasons for that? Not justifying it, but just saying, hey, I know I need to have this conversation because this friend, it really feels like we're out of balance. I have really helped this friend out a lot. They're quick to ask me for help, but the other week I needed help with something in my garage, and the friend said they were going to be there and they weren't. And this just seems like something they've done a lot. And so to go, okay, indicator light is disrespected. Indicator light means feeling out of balance. Say, okay, well, look at the indicator light, come up with what are you actually feeling? Why is that? Right. But then to say, okay, those are your emotions. There's a good chance that your friend feels so comfortable with you, right? They're like, our relationship is
Yeah.
so great. Look at that. Our relationship is so great that Drew helped me out, helped me move that couch. And I so appreciate Drew. And then when I couldn't help him, he had the grace to say, no problem.
Yeah.
He had no idea you were pissed, right? Like he's just like, how great is our friendship right now? Like, oh my gosh, I just so appreciate Drew. But you're fuming because, man, all that stuff, right? So it's that so part of it is to be able to say, all right, how are you feeling? Inventory that. And I actually recommend like writing it down. I have a journal that's like surgically attached to my body. And it talks about like, and not a my dear diary, it doesn't have a cute clasp and like a unicorn on it, that kind of stuff. But neuroscience says that when we are intentional with writing down our emotions,
Hmm.
oftentimes what that does is it helps your brain and your heart to decompress, and it takes some of the anger, some of the passion, some of the frustration, it takes some of the heat off of that to actually go through the process of handwriting it out, right?
Hmm.
Now, one of the things in giving yourself permission to prepare is to write that down, inventory it. Like, what are you feeling, and why are you feeling those things? But I always say, take a pause and say, why do you appreciate this friend? In the light of him screwing up, why do you appreciate this friend? What are some good things about this friend? Why is this a friend that you've actually, and there might be things that bug the shizness out of you on them, you know what I mean? But there's also like those things where you start to say, all right, why do I appreciate this friend? Well, we did have that one experience, and boy, he was there for me for this and that kind of stuff. So, it's good to get the what and the why of what you're feeling, but it's also good to dig into the why of why you do appreciate this friendship and why you want to be intentional to protect it by having this hard conversation.
Hmm.
Because, there's relationships. I know I have kind of transient relationships in my life. I get to meet a lot of people, which I'm wildly blessed by. And I know that not all of those people are going to be brothers.
Hmm.
Not all of those people are going to be people that I'm going to meet with on a monthly or weekly basis by any means. And that's okay. Not everybody is going to move into that type of relationship. So, as one of my good friends, Adam Carroll, says, the juice isn't always worth the squeeze.
Hmm.
Right. So, like, sometimes you might have an interaction with somebody and you're like, man, that sucked. But do I really care? Like, or do I really need to have a conversation with that person? Can I just let it go? Do I just need to remind myself, hey, watch out for that person? That person could kind of be jabby, or that person's maybe not reliable. I'm just going to remember that. But I don't need to have a hard conversation with that person. I see them once every 6 months. So what? Right?
Yeah.
Let it go. Right. But for those people where the relationships matter, you absolutely then want to enter into that conversation. Having asked, what is it you're feeling? Why are you feeling that way? Why is this person important to you? Why are you in relationship with this person? And then actually set up a protected time to have that conversation. Don't have that conversation on the fly in the hallway as you just happen to see them, all that kind of stuff. Have a protected time to say, hey, I really want to talk with you about something. I need an hour or I need a half hour, whatever. Protect the time. And then as you start to relay that, be able to say, okay, hey, this happened the other day. I have a feeling you don't know it, but this was my experience. This is what I experienced. I want to let you know that because I was frustrated by it. I don't want to carry that around. And so I just wanted to let you know that. And I forgive you, but I also want to get your perspective on it because I'd like for it to not happen again. And so tell me what your perspective was on that situation and how can we work together to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Oh, man. There's so much
So
here.
you just asked a coach that's been coaching for 20 plus years or whatever. So that's a pretty in-depth process, but if you kind of iron that out, that's kind of the basics of what I recommend.
But I love it though, because a lot of the times stuff like this isn't a simple, well, just do this. It's a complicated answer, but not because it's hard to do. It's just there's a lot of angles that you got to approach at it. So I appreciate that personally.
Well, and it's also that thing of like a lot of people are like, well, I tried to have a hard conversation. It didn't work. They didn't hear me at all. Like,
Well,
oh
you know
yeah.
about them.
Okay.
So-
What did you say? Like, and how did you prepare yourself? What mood were you in? How did you describe what you were feeling? How did you make them feel? If somebody made you feel that way, how do you think you would react? All those things. Right. So
Yeah.
it's not easy, but it is pretty simple. And it's also not common, but it's powerful. And it is interesting when you see people that are willing to have hard conversations, those people walk around with a lot more freedom than the
Yes.
people who aren't. And I
Yes,
don't
they
know
do.
about you, Drew, but the older I get, the more I want freedom.
Hmm.
And so it, and freedom, as the t-shirts at Walmart say, freedom's not free, right? But it's like, but it's that thing of, when it comes to relationships, that's absolutely true.
Mm. So this isn't a faith podcast, but I'm
Yeah.
upfront about my faith. Like, I think it's the
Yeah.
most important part of my life, and I
Me
can
too.
tell that your life has been influenced greatly. So
Huge.
talk to me about your faith. What does it mean to you, and how has it helped you, not just with this business, but in life in general?
Yeah, with everything. Um,
Yeah.
Everything. Just
Hmm.
everything. Just everything. And it's one of those where, interestingly enough, like, you know, learning. So I believe that there is an amazing God who loves us very much. I believe that Jesus came. I believe that he died for us, and I believe he loves us. And I believe there's a Holy Spirit, which is wild. And I believe the Holy Spirit moves all the time and can guide us, and we can feel direction and blessing and hope and peace and all of those things, which for some people they're like, yeah. For some of those people, they're just like, I'm thinking about turning this off. But I bring it up because when I first started our business, I didn't realize, but I had this belief that, like, God loved me. God moved in our lives. God actually healed my wife through 6 miracles. I'll get you the link sometime, but my wife had cancer, and God
Oh, wow.
pulled off 6 miracles in one day to bring her healing, miraculous healing. And it was 6 miracles in one day. I'll get you the link. It's an amazing story. You can go
Please
to
do.
mitchmatthews.com and just search 6 miracles, and you'll find a blog post that has been
I'll put it in the
visited
podcast
all over
notes.
the world. Yeah. So I believe that God was real. I believe that God moved, all that stuff. But I didn't realize it. But deep down inside, when I started our business, I kind of thought that God could move at church, God could move in hospitals, God could move in your neighborhood. But, like, for whatever reason, I believed, I don't know why, that kind of like in the marketplace, in the business world, like there was a line that God would walk up to and go, oh, whoops, you're going over there. I'll see you back when you get back home tonight. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that God can't move in
Yeah.
the marketplace. God can't move in my business. And I realized much later, and God was gracious to show me, but, like, God is everywhere and God wants to move and help us. And some of the coolest stories in our business on my entrepreneurial journey, I can absolutely say I worked hard, but some of the biggest breakthroughs absolutely came as God level miracles.
Yeah.
So I used to think faith was getting up and reading the Bible for 10 minutes and praying for 15 minutes, and then you go on with your day, and maybe you remember what you read that night, right? And that's it. And I realized, like, God's kind of saying, no, kiddo, I want to be with you all the time. And I am willing to speak to you. The creator of the universe is willing to speak to you and guide you throughout the day. And it's
Hmm.
amazing how much more I hear from him when I am focused on loving people and bringing excellence, and how hard it is to hear him when I'm focused on fear and the things I'm worried about.
Mm. Excellent answer. So I got, I think, one or two more questions, but this one's going to be
Yeah,
a chicken and an egg question, like
I
which
love
one
it.
is first? And
Yeah.
I love this one. So, do
Yeah.
you think that your success or I don't want to say success, do you think that your ability to succeed as a coach, as a life coach,
Yeah.
do you think that's because you are designed that way? Is it the experiences that you've had in your life? Is it both, or just an amalgamation of things?
Yes. So I, like, when it comes to the coaching part, and I have a really weird perspective because I became a full-time coach in 2002. So I've been full-time coaching and speaking since 2002.
Oh,
But in
wow.
2006, we started to train other coaches, and we've been able to help thousands of coaches. So I have this really weird experience and kind of perspective because I've been able to see certain things in my life, but then we've also seen it in countless other lives. And I see certain things. There are certain things that are absolutely unique to each individual. And then there are also certain patterns that are duplicated time and time again.
Hmm.
So I always say that the best coaches, and this can apply to so many different things, but you asked about coaching, and so this is going to apply to so many things. But the best coaches often are the people who have always been encouragers,
Hmm.
right? Like they are the people that in high school they were encouraging their friends. They were asking their friends about the things they wanted to do. They were saying, "Hey, good job, buddy." Those kinds of things. In college, they were maybe considered the bartender. I was either the bartender or the preacher, not the preacher, not because of my activities or my faith necessarily. It was just that I became that person that everybody came to when they were having problems.
Hmm.
And I can't tell you the number of times somebody said to me, Drew, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I don't tell anybody this, but that kind of stuff, right?
I've had the same
Yes.
experience.
Yeah. So I've found that a lot of the best coaches are just natural encouragers.
Hmm.
Now, not every encourager should start a business involving coaching, right? Some
Hmm.
people are just naturally encouraging, and that's great. That's what they're meant to be, and they're not meant to be an entrepreneur and not meant to have their own business, and that's okay. That doesn't mean they're a lower grade encourager. That means they're amazing, right? But
Yeah.
some people, some subset of those encouragers are meant to have a business. And I always say, part of that is a lot of the people that we help, I always say, hey, have you had that experience? Have you had somebody say, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but, and then they go ahead and tell you, there's a good chance you're an encourager. Now, the
Hmm.
next question is, yes, have you gone and had some experiences? Have you learned? And that doesn't mean you have to have a bunch of successes. It just means, are you learning? Are you stretching? Are you growing? Those kinds of things. But then also, is there any part of you that's always wanted more freedom?
Hmm.
Right? Like maybe part of you has been okay with having a job, but there's just a part of you that's kind of thought, I want to take this job and shove it. Like, or I want to call my own shots. I want to design my own business. I want to help the people I want to help. I want to make the money that I want to make. All those things. There's got to be a little bit of freedom fighter in there too. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you would have needed a dream of being an entrepreneur your whole life.
Hmm.
It can be that thing of being able to say, hey, is there ever been a part of you that wanted something of your own? Which and a lot of our most successful people actually coach on the side.
Hmm.
They just coach part-time, but some of those people make an extra 2,000, some make an extra 10,000, $15,000 a month that way, which is really cool, right?
Hmm.
And some people then go on to be full-time. But I always say a big part of that, the reason why I bring all of this up, and this is where it really applies to a lot of things, is when you've always been something, right? We've been talking about encouragers. If you've always been an encourager, there's a good chance that you don't value that as much as other people do.
That's good. That's really good. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
So that's hard for somebody that's always been an encourager. The thought of getting paid $5,000 by somebody to do what you naturally do. For some people, it's really hard for their brain to accept that. It's like, I've given it away for free my whole life. Why would I start charging $10,000? And when it comes to coaching, because it applies to so much, like people who are naturally good at numbers, some of them are okay with getting paid really, really well for being really good with numbers, but you'll see some people really wrestle with that. And it's anything you tend to be really good at, you tend to dismiss the value of it. But with coaching, what's really interesting about coaching, and I sell coaching for like a lot. I won't say a figure, but I sell coaching for a lot now. And what's amazing though is with coaching, it is something that I naturally do. It's something that I'm passionate about, but I've realized that when people pay for it, they are more invested. It's
Mm.
crazy that as my coaching has gotten more expensive, it looks like I'm a better coach. Not because I'm
Huh.
getting paid more, but people like if somebody dropped, what they would pay for a car on coaching, they are freaking all in, Drew.
Mm.
Like all in. So I know somebody that is going to invest a significant amount of money on coaching. If they're going to do that, then I know they are committed so we can get some stuff done.
Mm.
Like what we can get done in 3 months, what we get done in a year, it blows them away. And part of it is like I am a good coach. I'm a natural encourager. But part of it is they are freaking all in and
Mm.
it's go time.
Man, I want to keep you on time. So, is there anything else that you want to say before we finish? Because I could talk to you for
Ah,
hours.
well, no, man, this is great, and I'd love to come back at some point. I think your show is perfect and so needed. I think celebrating, the learning process, the messy middle, all of those things. You are encouraging people to do it, but I just want to encourage you and everybody that's listening, but especially you, Drew. Like, keep doing it, right? Like, the only way you grow is going through the messy middle. Right. Like, and I love the fact that you're trying different things. You're talking to different people. So, like, I love that you are a product of your process. And that to me is what makes for sustainable success, really in any field. But when it comes to podcasting, I mean, dude, with my Dream Think Do podcast, I've got over 400 episodes, which is nuts. Like, one of our sons did the math on it the other day. He's like, do you realize your average episode is an hour long? So that means there are 10 40-hour work weeks of your podcast episodes. He's like, that's a lot of you talking, dude. Right. But it's that thing of some of those episodes I thought, oh my gosh, this is so good. And some of those episodes I thought, eh,
Yeah.
not maybe not my best, or maybe it was an off day for the person I was interviewing. And what's wild is I've realized over the course of time, I am a terrible assessor. I am a terrible judge of what is good or not. Because what's interesting is the episodes where I'm like, I give it a B minus. Oftentimes those are the ones where somebody comes up to me and are like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
that episode changed my life. And I have to watch my face because sometimes my face will betray like that episode, like seriously, so I just want to encourage you on this, like keep moving forward. I love that you're learning it as you're doing it, you know, keep on with the messy middle. You get on the other side of it and realize there's no other side. It just keeps going, which is a beautiful thing. But every big dream has a surprise back door. So it's that thing of like you start something thinking it's one thing, you progress and learn, and sometimes it becomes exactly what you thought. But sometimes that thing becomes something else entirely, and it's bigger and it's better and it's more beautiful than you ever thought. That's why I always say most big dreams have a surprise back door, because most big dreams that start with one thing lead you to something else entirely that you could not have even imagined when you started. And I think that's where you're at with this, man. I have a feeling this is going to lead you places you have no idea yet. Just keep going.
Uh, Thank you so much, Mitch Matthews. One of the best interviews I've had. Thank you for coming on here. Thank you so
Awesome. I
much.
appreciate you, brother. Yeah, you're a great interviewer. It's an honor to be on. And yeah, and I love your family, and I'm so glad you are doing this.
Thank you. Well, hey, have a great day, and I'll see you at another point. So
Appreciate it, brother.
I don't know if I could ever say an interview is really perfect. If there was ever a classification for one, I think that would be it. That was my favorite. I really love that. Mitch, if you're watching this, thank you so much for letting me interview you. You were an incredible guest, and hopefully I will interview you again in person. Eventually, that would be amazing. Well, once again, thank you for joining the Successful Failures podcast. If you liked this, leave a comment, like, subscribe, leave a review, send it to your friends. That's the best way we're going to really expand this thing, and hopefully one day I can make this my real job. We'll see about that. But anyways, thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.